Hello everyone, how y'all doing? Now this video that I'm making is in many ways just kind of falls in line with some of the things I've uploaded in the past regarding my experience with Linux gaming, GPU hardware, specifically with AMD, because as I'm sure you're probably aware, AMD this year, I believe, they released RDNA 4, which is the 9000 series of graphics cards, and they did offer some architectural improvements compared to the previous ones. I think their AV1 encoder is a little bit better. I've actually tested AV1, it works on Linux. I have not compared it with RDNA 3 because I don't have an RDNA 3 card. Although, after this, I might actually consider getting a 7900 XTX, assuming that it's not price gouged, because I think it might be now because I don't think AMD is manufacturing those GPUs anymore. So the ones on the market are probably a little bit price hiked, but I'll have to check this later because the thing is, the 7900 XTX has always been an interesting card to me because I believe it was the first consumer card, because I'm not entirely sure in regards to their productivity oriented cards, specifically the CDNA, I believe. I don't know about those ones, but at least with RDNA cards, I believe RDNA 3 was the first one that actually included AI accelerators built into their graphics card, which was pretty interesting. And they started to slowly implement Rockham, though Rockham support has been pretty rocky, but I think it's getting better. But regardless, the thing is, it's been fine and all, but I always kind of hoped that they would do more with the AI acceleration. But with RDNA 4, I feel like that's where it starts to kind of matter a little bit more because uh, aside from some improvements with ray tracing, which to me doesn't really matter to me all that much because I don't really fuck with ray tracing all too much. For me, it was mainly with the upscaling because I've always had the opinion that although I think it's stupid to expect players to use an upscaler in 1080p, in high resolutions, I think it makes a lot more sense because at high resolutions, I feel like, it starts making less and less sense to run games natively. It's just so computationally expensive. Because when I say expensive, I don't just mean like GPU usage. I'm also talking about actual power draw. Like it is extremely expensive running at like 4K or especially higher resolutions. So I feel like on those tiers, it makes more sense to use upscaler, especially because by that point you probably already have sufficient enough pixel data to more accurately reconstruct the image to the resolution that you're targeting, anyways. So yeah, but regardless, I do like upscalers. I just don't like when developers abuse it a little bit when building their games. But I don't really want to discuss that. I've seen too many Borderlands 4 videos recently. I don't really want to. I want to. I don't want. I don't want to think about it. Anyway, FSR 4 is good. FSR 4 is pretty good because it's actually an AI based upscaler. In the past, it was software based. I mean, DLSS and FSR, they're like temporal based upscalers, but DLSS has always used the tensor cores, if I'm not mistaken. So they've always been powered by AI. Meanwhile, FSR has always been software based, but FSR 4 actually is an AI based upscaler. It's a pretty good one. It's not as good as DLSS 4, but they're pretty fucking close. I think AMD hasn't been this close with their upscaler. I think ever since really DLSS 1 and FSR 1, I believe. Like they're pretty fucking close in terms of image quality. So yeah, one interesting thing about FSR 4 is that before RDNA, I mean, I have this fucking OptiScaler menu on for quite a while. Uh, before I knew how FSR 4 worked, I always kind of assumed that it would work on RDNA 3, but unfortunately, FSR 4 is sort of like a hybrid of the Transformer and CNN model, and I think it also relies on certain instructions, more specifically FP4, which I don't think RDNA 3 supports. However, if you're on Linux, there were some like emulation solutions that kind of allowed you to run FSR4 through FP4 emulation because, you know, the open source community is fucking based as hell that we ended up fucking workarounds. Um, but recently, AMD ended up accidentally, I say accidentally because honestly, the more time passes, the more I'm starting to realize that maybe it wasn't an accident. But they ended up releasing the source code, or at the very least, they released a lot of like documentation for FSR4. And interestingly enough, the files that they ended up releasing under GitHub also included like pretty hefty, like the source code in general included some like information regarding running FSR4 on lower models. And I believe some people were able to somehow get FSR4 to work through init 8, I believe. I'm sort of basing this a lot of what I read online because I haven't fully verified this. Maybe one day I'll make like a full video. But regardless, TLDR, it works on RDNA 2, which doesn't even have AI acceleration, which I find it to be pretty fucking cool. And I kind of wanted to share you just how much of a big deal this is, because if it works on RDNA 2, and it does have some performance impacts, I'll talk about that a little bit later, but if it works on RDNA 2, and people are already found ways to make it work on RDNA 3, like, brother, FSR4 is becoming more and more relevant even on older generations, and it gets to the point where, damn, I'm feeling less incentivized to upgrade my GPU. So I have FSR 3.1.5 running because I kind of want to show you just the impact. So right now, Stellar Blade, this is the demo, though I do want to make it clear that I do have the full game. I just don't have it installed because, you know, file size and whatever. I already finished this game on my PS5. I do obviously plan on playing this later on PC, just not now. And the demo has like a smaller file size. But yeah, like this game, actually it's running FSR 3 through the fucking through OptiScaler. I believe I can technically change it to but the thing is, I'm not gonna do this because the way I ended up getting this to work is that I actually downloaded a DLL file that was compiled from the source code that AMD leaked. And the thing about that DLL file is that with some games, I think it might have actually made it so in general it runs FSR4 regardless if I'm using OptiScaler. And so for the time being, I'm going to mainly rely on OptiScaler by actually selecting the upscaler by using 3.1.5, because I'm just gonna tell you right now, it just makes it a lot fucking easier to actually test to see the actual image quality and performance impact. But yeah, FSR also, this is running on ultra performance and it looks bad. Like obviously, man, like this is ultra performance. I don't think like this is ultra performance at 1080p. Like the native resolution is 640 to 360p. Like this was never going to look good, like obviously. But yeah, I mean, if I was really hungry for performance, maybe I would consider playing like this. I would not though. Now, and also just notice one thing. Look at the hair effects. Like it looks so shimmery. It looks so pixelated. It looks so it looks bad. But then I do a little bit of magic and actually change the upscaler, and it looks way better. It looks like, I don't know if you guys can see through YouTube, because I don't know if YouTube might end up fucking up the video compression, but man, this looks so much better. This genuinely feels much better, to the point where, I don't know, maybe if I had like a mini PC or something like that, and this was the only way I was able to get like a 60 FPS experience, maybe if I'm on a Steam Deck, though then again, Steam Deck is not a 1080p, but I don't know, like maybe if I was playing this on like a Steam, and actually I might have to test this on a Steam Deck to see if because the performance impact will still be pretty big, but I'm curious to see, because man, this is genuinely like, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't personally play it like this, like on my actual PC. Like there's I can just play this native. Like native is already fine enough for me, but like this looks pretty decent. Like it's kind of hard to believe that an upscaler of this quality is running on fucking like on my RDNA 2 card. It genuinely is, and this is like ultra performance. If I change it to fucking like I don't know, like performance, like damn, we're getting closer and closer to looking like native. And actually, while we're at it, like this is like a fucking meme that I've seen on the internet where people are like, man, DLSS, it's mostly with DLSS, it's like, man, DLSS is so good, it looks better than native. uh that is a bullshit. DLSS does not look better than native. A lot of the times, what people really mean is that DLSS sometimes looks better than native TAA. And I that's not hard to believe, because while I'm not a TAA hater, I have to say some games have better implementations of TAA than others, and there's verifiable proof that TAA comes with some degree of blur. So, you know, if you tell me that DLSS looks better, which bear in mind, DLSS is an AI based upscaler. So if you tell me it looks better than fucking TAA, it's not gonna surprise me too much. But that's because TAA is not that good to begin with. Like if you compare this with like other anti-aliasing solutions like MSAA, SMAA, and stuff like that, I highly doubt either DLSS or FSR would look better than those anti-aliasing solutions. Unless they're also poorly implemented, which some of them are. Regardless, like I like what I'm seeing. I really am. And I do briefly want to talk about the performance cost, because it definitely does exist. And I'd say that obviously you are getting higher performance compared to native, because this was sort of like, this was like another meme that people would always say, which is like, man, if FSR 4 ran on like RDNA 2 or RDNA 3, the performance hit would be so big it might actually run worse than native. That was sort of like a meme, because there's a very good reason for why people would make that argument, because you know the truth is, even in RDNA 3 it does have AI accelerators, but those accelerators are just not as good as the ones in RDNA 4. So there's a very good reason for why people would say that. However, in this case in specific, it does run better than native. Like when I was playing specifically Powered Yakuza, like specifically in the beach area, like if I was playing this at native 4K, I was getting like 40 FPS, maybe if I was lucky 50, like, you know, 40-ish FPS. But then when I enabled FSR 4, it's crazy to say FSR 4 with my fucking 6900 XT. I was getting like, you know, 70, sometimes we drop like 68 FPS, you know, 68 to 75 FPS. So there is definitely some performance improvement. However, if I was using FSR 3.1, I would get to like 100. So yeah, there is definitely an impact, and your mileage may vary. Like personally speaking, I think like especially if I'm playing at like resolutions like 4K, there are some games where I might not really feel like the image quality provided by FSR 4 might matter all that much. Like for example, Pirate Yakuza I think has a bad implementation of FSR. Or actually, no. I'm sorry, no. I don't even think FSR is the problem. I think Pirate Yakuza is just badly rendered in general. Like I don't know what the fuck happened with recent RGG games, but like for like there's just something happening with the rendering of the fucking models and the world, and like even like the background, like the fucking ambient occlusion in general, it's just I don't know, it's fucked up. It's gotten fucked up in recent games. But regardless, I just think the game in general just has, you know, kind of poor rendering, and then when you use an upscaler, it just makes it even worse. And but for example, with Judgment and Lost Judgment, FSR 2 actually looks pretty good. Like genuinely speaking, it looks pretty awesome. So if I was playing that game, I probably wouldn't really bother with FSR 4, because like I don't know, if I'm using FSR 2, like not even 3, FSR 2 at 4K, I wouldn't fucking worry about image quality. But maybe with Power Yakuza, I probably would care a little bit. So yeah, that's why that's what I mean when I say your mileage may vary. I'm gonna continue testing this. I was a little bit concerned about any potential CPU performance impact. I have not noticed yet, but it is worth noting in case something like that happens. Like in this game, for example, I'm pretty sure the CPU usage is about this. I can fucking test it right now. I can literally just change the upscaler, and yeah, it's about the same. Like it's about the same. Like we're not really getting. Then again, the CPU that I'm using is definitely not like, it's definitely on the higher tier, so it is worth noting that. But yeah, this has been pretty fun to experiment. And one other thing I do want to mention is regarding ghosting, because I've seen a lot of people complain that Windows is experiencing some ghosting problems with RDNA 2, and I've also seen people say that the ghosting issues don't seem to happen on Linux. But I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm definitely seeing ghosting, 100%. Every single time I've tested FSR 4 on my 6900 XT, I noticed ghosting. Some games I feel like the ghosting is less noticeable than others, and I also do feel like the higher the preset, the less noticeable or pretty much negligible it is. But when I'm testing at ultra performance, which is usually what I end up testing, just because I feel like it's a little more fun to test ultra performance, I always notice ghosting. It's very noticeable, at least for me. So I did talk to the person that compiled the DLL, and he did say that he was working on fixing that. So it is worth checking that out. But yeah, I'm honestly pretty happy with what I'm seeing right now, because one thing, I guess to get back to the whole Borderlands discussion, because one of the things I saw, like is it the CEO? I don't fucking know who the guy is. Like one of the things he was mentioning was that, you have to be realistic about the hardware that you're using to play video games. You have to set your expectations. You have to consider the fact that you may need to fucking, use better hardware. And here's the thing, I think a lot of his excuses are fucking bullshit, because I'm going to show you all a little bit of a secret. Realistically, because I know, especially on PC, there seems to be this weird like expectation that people have that you're supposed to upgrade your hardware like every time there's like a new generation, or at best like in 4 to 4 years. You don't need to do that. Like, for example, and to be fair, my situation is a little bit different, but for example, as someone that has a 6900 XT, realistically, I don't fucking need to upgrade my GPU until the PS6 comes out. And the reason for why I don't need to do that is because well, it's not even really it's I'd say it's the primary reason, which is that most video games out there that get released are always going to target the mainstream consoles, which are the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. These two are still mainstream consoles. Like, don't get me wrong, PC gaming is growing, but these two still represent the mainstream consoles. And a lot of video game publishers, they have very good incentive to build their games to run on those consoles. Not just because Microsoft and PlayStation, like, no offense, they just have stricter certifications for the stability of video games running when running under consoles, but also because those pieces of hardware, they don't get a lot of permutations. The base models that they have, those are the ones that the video games target, and they're always going to build their games with those consoles in mind and the specifications. The Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, in terms of the graphics, is based on RDNA 2. Taking that into consideration, I'm probably not going to need to upgrade my GPU until the PS6 comes out, which hypothetically will be based on RDNA 5. I don't know, but like, this is just circulation. And so taking that, why would I need to upgrade my GPU? I have a 6900 XT. This GPU is above the power of the GPU on the PS5, which is based on like the 6700 non-XT. So why would I need to upgrade? You don't. Like, now granted, obviously, I am going to slowly get more and more games that will up the ceiling as far as like, GPU requirements. For example, the 6900 XT, there was a time this was promoted as a 4K GPU. At some point, this is gonna be I'd say even right now, it's more of a 1440p GPU, like especially with 9th gen games. But still, like if I have to play this as a 1440p card, that's not bad. And obviously, if you have a 6600 XT, okay, maybe you might need to upgrade. And also, I also think you need to consider like for example, um, the 46. Well, I don't know. Probably the RTX 4060 is probably better than the GPU on the PS5, but it also has less VRAM. And also, I think the bus bandwidth of the memory is a little bit slower. And so, you're probably going to end up running into some stutters and maybe even inferior 1% lows that, you know, you might need to genuinely consider upgrading your GPU if you get those cards. But like, I feel like at that point, that's more of a case of, players being educated when they buy GPUs. Like me personally, I'm telling you right now, I don't think it makes any bit of sense to buy GPUs with 8 gigabytes of VRAM. I think 12 is a minimum, and it's a pretty strong minimum. And you should really, like, honestly, you should really consider 12 and up. Like, no 10, no 8. That's in my opinion. At least if you're trying to get an experience that's about as comfortable as you can get on a 9th gen console, like the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. Now, of course, that's in terms of GPU. When it comes to the CPU, it's a little bit different because the PS5 has like unified memory, and I think the IO controller is also potentially a lot better, and there's a lot of aspects of consoles that might end up requiring PC to overcompensate a little bit. For example, just for the mere fact that to kind of explain you what I mean, the CPU on the PS5 is Zen 2, but at the same time, like the RAM on the PS5 is a lot faster than any fucking piece of RAM that you can get with an AM4 platform, which is what is required to run a Zen 2 CPU. And so, taking that in consideration, maybe you might need to start with Zen 4, maybe just to account for any memory bottlenecks potentially. So yeah, when it comes to the CPU, I think it becomes a little bit more complicated. But in terms of like the GPU, I probably don't need to upgrade this at all. And in recent years, the only thing that was making me consider upgrading is the upscaler, because FSR 2, it does its job, but sometimes I look at DLSS, I'm like, damn, I wish I could get this level of quality. And when the RDNA 4 came out, I was like, oh, maybe I can reach this level of quality. And that's why I ended up buying the 9060 XT. It's not the primary card on my PC, but it's an RDNA 4 card that I have right there in case I want to test the capabilities of RDNA 4, just to kind of be on the cutting edge, even just at least taste the cutting edge just a little bit. And as I gained some experience with this card, I was like, damn, RDNA 4 low key kind of good. Maybe I will get the 9070, but honestly now I don't think I need it. Like, as long as I can experiment with FSR 4 on RDNA 2, maybe I don't need it. So yeah, I'm glad AMD, I guess, leaked this, because I don't know, I guess it brought new life to their older GPUs. And I don't know, following this, I'm gonna continue testing this. I'm gonna continue seeing what are the limitations of FSR 4 on RDNA 2. I'm sure there's more. I'm sure there might be some games where I might end up experiencing unintended bugs and stuff like that. I know I experienced that with like the Sherlock Holmes game, even on RDNA 4 cards. So, I will have to check this even further. But also, one thing about RDNA 4 is actually one of the main reasons for why I didn't immediately buy a card is that last time I checked it, it seemed like the performance was still better on Windows. It doesn't seem like RDNA 4 has been fully optimized for Windows, like for Linux, because with RDNA 2, you're getting a fucking premium experience on Linux. You're probably getting higher frame rates in most games. But with RDNA 4, it's not like that at all. I still think that the vast majority of the games still run better than on Windows. not by a whole heck of a lot, but it's a noticeable advantage, like especially when it's like a consistent advantage across multiple games. But that's like the last time I checked. It's possible things have changed, but like I did notice that with the early benchmarks, which made me think, maybe I should hold off on getting this. I mean, when RDNA 5 comes out, that might be a little bit different, because RDNA 5 will very likely come out at the same time the PS6 will, and at that point, I'm gonna need a new GPU regardless, because I always want to stay ahead of consoles. So yeah, that's all I wanted to share. Thank you AMD for leaking FSR 4. At this point, I'm fairly certain you did it on purpose, and goodbye.